Interesting thing that happened in Democratic politics this week was that Martin O'Malley and Bernie Sanders were, John, heckled, confronted by the Black Lives Matter movement. Put that in context for us. Is that important? What does that movement mean?
I think it's important, and it's illustrative of the thing that's happening in both parties, right? Which is that the activist parts of the parties there's fraying at the seams of the Republican coalition in terms of a part of the party that Jamelle was talking about earlier in terms of the Trump movement, and there's a fraying at the seams of the Democratic coalition in terms of an activist part of the Democratic base that is raising its voice and wanting to hold accountable and see not just the old kind of pacifying language of the Democratic Party, which is kind of patronizing and wants to move on. People in the activist base of the party are saying, we want action now. This is an urgent moment, and we want to hear more than the typical rhetorical flourishes we've heard from progressives in the past.
And Jamelle, you wrote smartly this week about why, when Martin O'Malley says in response to Black Lives Matter, all lives matter, why that doesn't ring true. Talk about that a little bit.
Right. I think that a good analogy would be if you went to a fundraiser for breast cancer, and everyone's talking about how we need to do something about breast cancer, we need to raise money for breast cancer, and then someone in the audience raises their hand and says, well, you know, we got to do stuff for all cancers too. And in that particular moment, the reference to all cancers acts as sort of like trying to divert attention away. Obviously, we have to do something for all cancers, but in this particular moment, we're talking about breast cancer. Likewise, I think the Black Lives Matter activists believe, and I think they're right, that there is an acute problem of police violence against Black Americans, and that's what we're talking about. You can sort of think of that Black Lives Matter as having an addendum of 2. Black Lives Matter 2. Black people should not be subject to this kind of violence. And to say all lives matter, even if you are kind of unaware of that context, reads as not just a dodge, but a dismissal.
Hillary Clinton was not at that event at which the other 2 candidates were heckled, but she has talked about this issue on the Stop.
She has, and the first time she didn't get it quite right, and she's improved since then. And I think, the frustration stems from the fact that these activists felt like you haven't paid enough attention to this movement to understand what we want to hear, to understand what the movement is about, that this is not just about civil rights, this is very specific, and you're not saying what we want to hear. You're kind of giving us these platitudes, these generalities, you're saying what you've done for our community in the past. We want to hear very specifically what you're going to do about this issue going forward.
I'll say one other thing that's just really important. This is why Bernie Sanders will not be the Democratic nominee. Not enough strength with minority voters. Hillary Clinton still has that. He is consigned to have a lot of difficulties because he has so little support among African Americans and Hispanics.
Last word to you, John. Thanks so much. I want to thank our panel. We'll be right back to talk about new developments in the war on ISIS.